Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wellness Wednesdays. This is a BEMER Medical Education Series, and I am your host, Dr. Joshua Burka, medical consultant for BEMER North America. So today we're going to be discussing a topic within health and wellness that every single person listening to today or watching this, you're dealing with it. You have dealt it. You will deal with it. It's not a disease, but it is the cause of so many acute and chronic diseases. It's not associated with health unless you're able to experience it and recover from it quickly. What is it? I'm referring to this all-encompassing thing that we call stress. And for those of you who are new to Wellness Wednesday, I'll be introducing BEMER for about 15-20 minutes or so with respect to this interrelationship between how blood flows, where it goes, and how stress impacts our health, our wellness. We also have a very special guest today to explore this enigmatic but clear impact stress can have on our health and what we can do to leverage stress or leverage outcomes in a positive way by controlling or regulating our responses to stressful stimuli versus allowing our unconscious mind, our unconscious driven reactions that really can lead down to an insidious loop of experiencing stress without appropriate recovery. And that is truly a recipe for disease. When stress isn't present, when stress is present and recovery isn't there, not much to talk about. The body is only capable of compensation to a certain point, and then symptoms come. Disease manifests. But before we do get into this topic, I do want to go through this obligatory disclaimer. None of the statements that I'm presenting today have been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration or Indoor Health Canada. They're not intended to diagnose, treat, or prevent any disease or cure any disease. Furthermore, none of the statements should be construed as dispensing medical advice, making claims regarding the cure of disease, nor is it being implied that BEMER products are preventing or curing any disease state. You should always consult with a medical or a licensed healthcare provider before starting any health protocol or using any health device like BEMER, especially if you're under medical care. BEMER products are in no way a substitute for medical care. And finally, BEMER products are FDA Class 2 cleared medical devices and are registered and licensed by Health Canada as Class 2 medical devices. In fact, when you really look at this, and I want to go back to that last point, BEMER is the only FDA Class 2 cleared medical device that stimulates muscles via low frequencies and low output power intensities pulsed electromagnetic field stimulation. The intended use within the United States is to temporarily increase local blood circulation within muscles, as well as to stimulate these muscles in order to improve and facilitate muscle performance. Above in the Canadian provinces, as well as the rest of the world, the intended use is to increase impaired frequency of vasomotion of small and very small precapillary arterial vessels, and this results in an improved distribution of blood flow within the capillary networks of the microcirculation. And this all works not because it's a PEMF. It actually has to do with this unique waveform and this patented BEMER signal that are the active ingredients that stimulate the muscles to contract and to relax, as well as increasing microcirculation that facilitates functional blood flow or hemodynamics. I'll say this, there's no other medical device that uses an electromagnetic field stimulation to achieve these results and has demonstrated the scientific and clinical results as it relates to circulation like BEMER. Period, point. Let's get into the circulation a little bit before we find out what stress has got to do with it. So we're all aware of the circulatory system, but we don't always think about the microvessels. We think of the heart and these large vessels that we can see, but we have thousands and thousands of miles of vessels that run through our body, and these majority of vessels are tiny, very, very small. In fact, about 75% of the body are microvessels, not the large ones that we can see. And these microvessels make up the microcirculation and are the functional part of the circulatory system. Take a look at this research paper. It's a meta-analysis of an incredible amount of microcirculation research over the past years. This one's titled Human Microcirculation Regulation of Flow and Beyond. It is the most cited research paper ever in the history of publications within the field of microcirculation. It's published by Dr. David Gutterman back in 2016. And there's a few points here I want to look at because it says the microcirculation is responsible for orchestrating adjustments in vascular tone to match local tissue perfusion with oxygen demand. It's also tasked with providing nutrients and removing metabolic byproducts from virtually every single living cell in the body, and microcirculation plays a critical but indirect role in all of tissue function. And when we look at this paradigm is a great opportunity to explain why the microvascular dysfunction is such a powerful predictor or indicator of cardiovascular events, and can also help identify new approaches in both treatment and prophylaxis or prevention. So the topic of microcirculation, we always think, oh, circulation, it must start with the heart. The heart's the master pump. When many of us do think of circulation, we've been told that the heart acts as this central muscle that pumps all the blood through the body. And the heart does not pump all the blood through the body. At least it doesn't do it alone. There's over 2,000 gallons that are circulating through our body each day. And the average person only has about a gallon, maybe a gallon and a half, 2 gallons if you're a larger person. The heart does pump blood, but it also has many helping hands, or I should put it in this way, of many helping muscles that change the movement of the vasculature, the diameter, what we call the lumen, within the microcirculatory network. I want to take a look at this heart from a vascular perspective. On the left, you can see what's called an angiogram. On the right, you'll see a image here, which is a picture of a plasticized heart. Either way, I want you to more look at this aspect of the large vessels, which you can see on the left, those big ones. And that's what interventional cardiologists look at when they're looking at blockages, or if the right circumflex or the widowmaker is affected by occlusion or atherosclerosis. But when you look on the right side, those vessels less than 500 microns, there's so many more. Here's a great example. It looks like more than 75% to me of the microvessels, but it's these microvessels that play a vital role in maintaining both the structure and the function within the muscles, as well as tissue within the entire body. We know our blood permeates virtually every cell within our body. Questions I've always asked: how does it flow? Where's it going? How is it circulating? And the most important question today is, what's stress got to do with it? Turns out a bunch. Before we get into what stress has to do with it, we have to understand some of the mechanisms by which we, as individual people, respond to stress or react. So our body depends on our nervous system to provide feedback, both locally and systemically, to protect us from and to integrate us within our very environment. What we see, what we smell, what we taste, what we feel, this creates our experiences, and our experiences determine our perceptions. The ANS, or the autonomic nervous system, is the control system that acts largely unconsciously, I have to say for sure, regulating body functions like the heart rate, digestion, respiratory rate, pupillary constriction, urination, sexual arousal, for example. And it's split into two parts. Oops, flip it back here. Split into two parts: the sympathetic, which is fight or flight, and the parasympathetic, which is rest and digest. And it's not a one or another thing. The balance of the autonomic nervous system is vital in how we navigate and move and groove through this world. BEMER targets these muscle vessels, right, rather the muscles of the vessels, to modulate stress responses so we can stay in the flow. And this state or flow state is called the zone. I like to think of it as being in a state of relaxed readiness. And a person in this zone, or expressing high levels of what we call heart rate variability, it's the hallmark of being in the zone, high levels of HRV, heart rate variability. And it's the only way we can effectively maintain self-regulation of our system, sustaining the functional microcirculatory blood flow, or what we said before, hemodynamics. And I want to make a crucial statement right here. The autonomic nervous system supports health and supports restoration only when it's not recruited for defense. We're going to find out what happens when it is recruited for defense and not recovered. Because being stressed is absolutely a state of being on the defense, ready for the next stimuli, ready for the next insult. And it's not in a healthy way. These experiences for some might seem minor or small, but they can build up to a point of physiological dysfunction and ultimately lead to pathology or the expression of disease. So you're looking up at the screen here, this allostatic load. What is an allostatic load? Think of this as the wear and tear on your body, which accumulates as an individual is exposed to repeated and chronic stress. So it's your total exposure, your total load. And this term was coined, back in 1993 by Bruce McEwen, Elliot Steller, and it represents a physiological consequence of chronic exposure to fluctuating or heightened neuroendocrine responses, or even think neurovascular responses as it relates to being reactionary, which results from repeated or prolonged chronic stress. Take a peek at the graph here, because on the graph, the right here represents the effect of increased stress on the performance of the body. The lower the stress levels are, the less likely the allostatic load will have a significant impact on one's performance or recovery of their overall health. And although increased stress levels result in increased stress on the body, when we look at this, it's about the ability to recover. Some people do have adverse effects, but those who are able to recover from stress are less likely to break down, and they're more likely to maintain that autonomic regulation of homeostasis. And where do we see these effects of stress break the body down first? For sure, the nervous system, vascular system, these are the first to be affected. But the entire body has to be observed systemically and functionally to truly comprehend how stress impacts us on a holistic level. So what's stress have to do with blood flow, circulation, performance? What's it have to do with recovery, regeneration? I know this is a stressful slide that looks like there's a lot of words, and there is. And I'm not saying that BEMER is involved with treating anything that stress causes, but I'll tell you what, let's break this down, because our energy levels, our health, our wellness, these are a big deal. And when we look at this, stress is a very intriguing phenomenon. It's really in the eye of the beholder, or I shouldn't say the eye of the beholder, but the mind's embodiment through our experiences of every moment, every single day. The brain and the nervous system, it's like a complex interface between information that we're receiving and information we receive from our environment, and how we are interpreting that information through the lens of our life's experiences. And we're ideally maintaining the structure that we need, sustaining the function that we need, so we can keep going, surviving, and thriving. A positive stress response enables us to mobilize energy, for example, in an efficient, productive manner. But the effect of long-term chronic stress has a direct effect on energy metabolism. I'm going to label a couple of things here. Myopathy, this is a disorder of the skeletal muscles. Even sarcopenia, breakdown of muscle over stress, can break down proteins in the body, including ourself, eating ourself away. Also leads to inefficient energy use. When we're stressed, we don't mobilize energy to do work effectively and to accomplish tasks in an efficient and functional manner. But what we do when we're under stress, we're driven by defensiveness. We're driven by survival instincts. And that can have truly a detrimental effect on mitochondrial bioenergetics, how we produce and regulate energy. And these function of bioenergetics are directly dependent on functional microcirculatory blood flow. Also, chronic stress has been directly affected with, talk about environment, how one processes the sweetness in life, sugar metabolism. So it's been directly associated with late stage development of adult onset type 2 diabetes, DM2. And this all comes back to energy when you really break it down, as does everything. But in the body, it's about the mitochondria and the ability to transform and utilize energy. And we're talking about mitochondrial bioenergetics here. So whether we're talking about growth, development, metabolic function, the role of energy is absolutely fundamental in every single aspect of life. And life is full of and dependent upon energy transformations. We survive basically because of our ability to transform and to exchange energy. And energy is not static. Energy is dynamic, and this dynamic flow of energy is self-regulated based on energy expenditure and metabolic needs. So there's an extreme delicate balance between what we take in, what we store, offset with the amount of energy needed to maintain both structural integrity and to support optimal function. So we need energy for every single process within the body, and stress can have a direct and adverse effect on our energy availability as well as our energy utilization. As far as cardiovascular tone, a functional stress response denotes an increased vascular tone, but consequences of prolonged or chronic stress are decreased vascular tone. Think about it. No one can hold a weight up. You're toned for a while, but then you get tired and the muscles literally get tired. Dysregulated vasomotor function occurs from chronic stress, hypertension, atherosclerosis, and ultimately we as human beings compensate for as long as we possibly can before symptoms develop, whether they're mental, whether they're emotional, or whether they're physical. And on a physical level, the vascular networks are directly and detrimentally impacted by stress. Take a look at here, and I'm not going to go through this idea of autoregulation, but we are autoregulating all the time based on our interpretation of our environment. And autoregulation is something that BEMER supports. And it's the intrinsic capacity of these resistance vessels, arterioles, to dilate and constrict. Not one or the other, but maintaining tone. That's constriction, that's dilation. It's the tone. We think of the posture, the tone, how somebody walks, how they move, their countenance. That's what it is. And so maintaining tone of the vessels in response to these dynamic perfusion pressure changes and to maintain a relatively constant blood flow based upon the metabolic needs, that's why these are self-regulated and auto-regulated. The heart does that? The brain does that? Not by itself. So very, very intricate aspects, and we're going to talk about some of these things right now because self-regulation of blood flow is a local process as well. It's not managed specifically by the heart or even the brain for that matter. Circulation is tightly regulated by both the central nervous system as well as local control mechanisms. And blood that's carrying oxygen is coming in from, you see the red side over there on the left, oxygen, nutrients, these things come in, are interfacing to the cells, dropping it off and picking up waste products and clearing them out. And these networks play a vital role in circulation. This is where the action is going on. I've said this many times before, we're only as healthy as what we can eliminate. It's not just what we can take in. It's not just, oh, I eat the best foods. How are you clearing waste products, metabolic waste products? That has to do with circulation also. And how we maintain vascular tone is really a combination of neurovascular involvement via alpha beta receptors, and these control and regulate the smooth muscles. And that's through the autonomic nervous system, sympathetic, flight or flight. So parasympathetic, for example, is going to allow those vessels to close up or force them open so more blood flow can go through when we need it. And this mechanism of the nervous system or neurovascular interaction isn't alone. It doesn't stand alone. There's another mechanism that's very tightly controlled in healthy people, that the endothelial cells form a single cell layer of the blood vessels, and this regulates exchanges in the bloodstream with the surrounding tissues. And these specialized cells are able to contract, oscillate, as well as release a very well-known signaling molecule called nitric oxide, NO. And we all know that nitric oxide is a potent vasodilator. But it's not how much your vessels can dilate or contract. Again, I'm going to say it's the tone that they keep and their resilience to respond versus react to stimuli or insults and the functional needs of the tissue that they serve. When we're exposed to stress, digestion is suppressed. Simple. You don't want the blood in the belly to digest when you need it in your outside to defend yourself or to run. And so if this isn't balanced, there's been clinical evidence demonstrating the increased risk of ulcers in the stomach, impaired capacity to repair wounds and ulcers, increased fat deposition. I'm not talking healthy. I'm talking fat, visceral adipose tissue around the abdomen, in the organs of the abdomen, the abdominal region. That's unhealthy fat. That's communicating through adiponectin, inflammation, bad plan. And why does the body do this? It's compensatory. The body's storing fuel. Fat burns approximately 3 times more effectively than sugar, and it's even preferred energy source for certain organs in the body. But WAT, or white adipose tissue, is pro-inflammatory. Something else good healthy stress does is stress response suppresses growth. And we know this when you get an injection of cortisone or something like that. Yeah, it suppresses growth. It can cause psychogenic dwarfism. This is a growth disorder observed between younger 2 to 15, caused by extreme emotional deprivation or stress. It also happens to be the same age range of the expression of something called dysautonomia. And I'm not going to get into details, But I have a strong belief that a lot of our chronic diseases that are manifesting stem from subclinical dysautonomia. I'll put it to you this way, and here it says even bone loss in adults, but simply put, stress impacts the ability to rest and recover. And if we're not resting and recovering, folks, we're not performing well. To power up your performance and self-regulate, it's essential to live within the balance of doing work, so using energy, and resting and regenerating. Rest and recovery are key to performance, they're key to resiliency, and they're key to self-regulation. And an individual's ability to perform is directly related to their ability to recover. We're only as healthy as what we're capable of taking in, digesting, assimilating, transporting, utilizing, detoxifying, and again, eliminating from our system. And as it relates to stress, everyone says, well, you got to be on the guard. You can be ready without always keeping on point. So it's not about getting ready, it's about staying ready in a functional way. I want to go back to the basics here, especially when we look at reproduction, because it's the same, whether it's stress response or stress-related consequences. Stress suppresses reproduction, point, period, dot, end of story. Females, irregular cycles, loss of cycles, failure of implantation of fertilized egg. Males, decreased testosterone levels, erectile dysfunction. How's this? Everyone, male, female, them, it, whatever it is, all have, under stress, decreased libido, loss of libido. And if you're worried about survival or you're on defense, why would you be thinking about sex? Next to sleeping, the act of sexual intercourse or that connection is one of the highest vulnerabilities in nature. Animals get attacked, they attack each other in these times because their guard is down. And I'm not going to get into the details of what's up, but when should we be relaxed? Excuse me. When we should be relaxed and not worried about being attacked or dying, that's that act. And so the libido goes down because we have to shift gears from the sex hormones into cortisol production, from cholesterol into getting ready more for survival. Which, by the way, could all be in your head. It doesn't even have to be a real event. The brain doesn't know the difference. Let's get into the immune system here, because it's clearly seen that low-grade stress has a positive response. It's actually called hormesis. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But increased stress over time sets up individuals to be more susceptible to some infectious disease, not so much associated with cancer risk directly, but I can tell you this, a lack of sleep can be an effective stress, which has been highly associated with the expression of cancer. And when we sleep, our lymphatic system, our drain brain is working, or our brain drain. And if we're not removing waste from this drainage that's lymphatic, we're setting up a milieu that's rich for pathologies like cancers and other things to develop. How's your immune system affected? BEMER helps with blood flow, and your very immune system lives within the blood flow, lives within the lymphatic flow. And for your immune system to be resilient, you need to be resilient. You need to be toned. You need to be prepared. You need to be on guard, not hypervigilant on guard, as no one can be on guard and ready at all times, burning the candle at both ends. I want to be clear about this, about burnout, because burnout is not a lack of resiliency. Burnout is maxing out one's potential without recovery. Maxing out one's potential without appropriate recovery. Another effect of stress is on our cognition. It can sharpen cognition, alertness, enhance memory. So negative aspects of stress are forgetfulness, disconnection of neuronal network, inhibition of birth nuance. So even especially in the embryological developmental of the fetus, the young child. Can deplete dopamine, anhedonia, no responses, depression. And as I stated earlier, if you want to be in the flow, be alert but relaxed in this homeodynamic state of resiliency, then it's imperative to manage stress in a healthy manner. And boosting your blood flow with BEMER really is a step in that right direction to combat the effects of stress and to be more prepared for these stressful insults in the future. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but I want you to know this. Traumatic stress has been directly associated with epigenetic imprinting or transfers. And so this epigenetic imprinting is relevant to both humans and animals as it relates to inter and transgenerational inheritance of the effects of traumatic stress. Let me tell you about this. You could be exposed in this generation to live traumatic stress, and 4 generations deep after you will have the same upregulated capacity to respond to that type of stress. It's directly transferred. And you can look at that as a positive way, but you can also look at that with a double-edged sword in a very negative way. We have to ask ourselves these questions. How are we navigating stress? How are we coping with stress? And what is the solution? And I'm not saying BEMER is the solution, but it is a part of a solution or a therapeutic lifestyle change, TLC. And it's highly effective to help manage, or should I say, recover from stress. That's BEMER therapy. Easy to use, convenient to use. And I think of BEMER as like internal exercise. It's not just the stimulation for the performance part, but it's also the recovery or regeneration for that downtime. Lie down, press the button, use one or more of the BEMER applicators to de-stress from the inside out. When we're using BEMER, we're getting better circulation, feeling healthier, living a better life. BEMER has been proven as an adjunct therapy to be safe and effective in both home use, clinical use. 8 minutes is all we're talking about here. BEMER busts the effects of stress through boosting recovery. I'll say it again. BEMER busts the effects of stress through boosting recovery. And with that, I want to continue on this talk track of what stress got to do with it regarding health, wellness, performance, recovery, and how we're using BEMER to help support our friends, ourselves, through healthy lifestyle. And to do that with me today is a very special guest and a colleague. Her name is Dr. Barbara Borland. She graduated from Duke University with a bachelor's in science, cellular biology back in 1976, and a medical doctorate degree in 1980. After 8 or more years of advanced training, she moved to the Tampa area in Florida. She practiced for over 26 years there as a diagnostic radiologist, focusing on interventional procedures and breast cancer diagnosis. And since retiring from medicine, my gosh, coming up on almost 10 years ago, she returned to her absolute love of medicine and obtained certification as a functional medicine practitioner. And her practice, called Firm Foundation of Health, is located within the Tampa Bay area of Florida, and it's designed to support those within her faith community who are unable to access care due to either financial burdens or the financial burdens of testing that uncover the root cause of disease or poor health. She serves her clients as an advocate, as an educator, a counselor, and I'm going to add this one, as a highly skilled facilitator, because she facilitates so much for so many. On a personal level, Barbara married her husband 19 years ago, and together they found their love in creating and supporting 3 beautiful children, 2 sons-in-laws, and 8 grandchildren. She's very active in her church as a leader in women's Bible studies. And so with that, I'd like you to join me in welcoming Dr. Barbara Borland to BEMER's medical education event for this Wellness Wednesday, What's Stress Got to Do with It? Welcome, Dr. Borland.
Hi, Joshua.
How you doing, Barbara?
Great to see you. Hey, that was a great summary. I learned a lot.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, hopefully we can extrapolate and synthesize some of the information for our guests. But before we do start, Barbara, would you mind sharing with our guests how you got involved with BEMER, when you got involved with BEMER as a modality, a therapeutic modality?
Of course, yeah. I can't remember the exact year, but it's been a while. But okay. It has to do with a friendship. My dear friend, Lisa. And we met many years ago, over 20 years ago, through my prior career in breast cancer detection. She was a patient, and we became fast friends over the years. But we've always been together, interested in finding ways of optimizing health, both for ourselves, for our families, but really extending beyond that. We just love helping people. It's just our passion. So we've done a few things together, and she comes knocking on my door one day and says, "You got to look at this." Well, it was because if she has a background as a medical sales rep, if she had come knocking on my door at the hospital, I would have politely said bye because I would have been in my doctor mode at the time. Okay. But because it was a friend who I deeply trusted, I said, "Yeah, I'll take a look at it." And so I looked, I did, and she had some experience with a relative, And I said, well, that's pretty remarkable. I'll open my mind about it. So I looked at the science, of course, just blown away by it. I was at the very beginning of my tiptoeing into the concept of moving out of conventional medicine into functional medicine. And it just exploded my mind with thinking of the possibility. So I just got very excited about it. I've enjoyed, of course, I use it. Everyone in my family uses it, and countless friends and lots of clients. So it's been a great ride.
Love it. Love it. And so you've been using BEMER. I mean, of course, you started using it yourself before you were using it with your clients or patients.
Right.
And before we talk about BEMER, I know that BEMER is an important part here, but I want to talk about stress. I mean, really, what's stress got to do with it? I look at stress as not even like the connective tissue in the body, but the space between the connective tissue, literally like the fluid. It's that which is everywhere, but no one really talks about it in a way that's directly connected to another thing. How do you approach even to identify how stress is affecting your clients?
It's rare for me to find a client who doesn't have stress. It's really rare. And I live within a relatively stable group of people, but they have life happen to them. A lot of them, it goes well beyond just emotional, psychosocial stress, which of course is clearly important. Lots to say about that. But they come physically ill, and physical illness itself is a major stressor of the body. So looking at stress and all of its aspects is a critical part of my intake. And I do a really detailed intake with all of my clients, going back to their childhood. You know, you've been through the Institute of Functional Medicine, you know how they do it. You start at the beginning and work
ATMs,
through it.
We look at antecedents, triggers, mediators. Love it.
Yeah. And so oh my gosh, Joshua, you know this from your own clients. Everyone has a story.
That's right.
Everyone has a story, and those stories are not always pretty, and they're not always soft and gentle. There are some really major traumas that happen to people over their lifetime. And although many people are able to recover functionally from those traumatic experiences of their early years, they have lasting impact that stays embedded within the way their body works. And so for me to know I work a lot more with women than men, to know what they went through as a young girl, going through their teens, going through their college years, going in that first or second or third marriage or whatever, just knowing all of the things that happened to them not only brings me closer to the patient, to the person, but it also helps me understand how deep the hurt is. Then you jump into their present condition, and they've got a lot of physical things going on, and a lot of those things aren't going to get fixed until they deal with the other stuff from the past. So I talk about it a lot with people.
Yeah, there's really nothing. I mean, this is what I would call an obstacle to cure. In many cases, I mean, unless you're dealing with that, you're really just going. I mean, a doctor or a healthcare provider is just covering the surface. They're not really getting to what you would identify with your website as root cause medicine.
Right. Now, it doesn't take away the importance of attacking those things that we can get some immediate results with, because it is a cyclical thing. One thing feeds on another. So no, I can't go back and fix their childhood trauma, but if I can help with their insulin resistance and their hypertension and their cognitive difficulties through lifestyle interventions and nutritional supplementations and nutrition, just pure nutrition, and sleep, number one, always sleep, then they start being able to be better able to have that emotional psychosocial resilience. So we work on everything at the same time.
You mentioned cycles. It's very interesting. And one of the first cycles I think about in this 24-hour period or periodicity is the sleep-wake cycle as it relates to the inverse relationship between melatonin and cortisol.
Yes.
Sun comes up, cortisol comes down. Midday, melatonin starts. And there's this intimate relationship between recovering and being ready to go, performing.
Exactly.
It's interesting because when I look at sleep, sleep is actually the only treatment for the resultants or sequelae of stress.
Yeah.
It's the only way to truly recover. And you can say, well, I medicate, I meditate, or medicate. I said that by accident, which leads people into how we cope with stress. But I want to talk about sleep because, I mean, that's a really strong statement to make, that sleep is the only recovery of stress. It's very interesting what happens. I mean, when we think about why people don't sleep, they're not able to let go in many cases. How about you? Do you ask them the questions? Do you have trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, all of these items?
We go into every bit of it. Yeah. I want to know everything about their nighttime.
That's right.
Yeah, I do. Right. Because it's even the pattern of sleeplessness is I know. So I really get very excited about investigating someone's cortisol pattern through the day, and just listening to what kind of sleep disorder they have, what their particular issue is. It gives me a clue as to what that testing is going to show. Because I know that, someone who has this kind of pattern, well, they're most likely their cortisol pattern will be this. So it's, it's very important to do that. I always focus on sleep. Again, it's one of those negative downward spirals. You have anxiety, you have stress, you have worry, all those things that keeps you from sleeping. Well, then the lack of sleepiness just simply compounds the problem. So we have to find a way of putting a stick in the gear and stopping that cycle and getting them some sleep and getting them some recovery, so that then we can start working. I tell them, until I get you sleeping, we can't really make headway. So let's do that. Yeah.
Well said. Well said. And again, you don't have to take a sleeping pill or something like that, or use BEMER during sleep. What we do during the day is very important as it relates to how we are able to let go in these rhythms, meaning go, 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 rest, rest, rest. When people have trouble falling asleep, they have a hard time shifting into that lower gear, versus maybe someone has that 1 to 3 a.m. wake up where they're getting an early cortisol spike.
Exactly. And I love talking to people about their routine in the 3 hours before bedtime, because that sets the entire. Yeah.
I want to talk about that and the importance of what we do to prepare to let go, to recover. I mean, no one thinks about like preparing for the sacredness of sleep.
That's beautiful. I love that. Yeah. So it's critically important that you cannot have the expectation of your body that you can work all the way up until midnight working on that term paper or that major project and then just hit the pillow and go to sleep. Unless the only way it works is if you're so exhausted from not getting enough sleep for days on end, but you can't expect to have good sleep. So you must prepare the body. And so people have very interesting habits.
It's true. And let's talk about those habits, because habits come from doing things over and over. But what the real question I always try to get in with the clients or the patients is, what's the program and how did you get programmed? Was it from before you were even born, or was this something that was adopted because it served you at some point one way or another? Maybe you can think of a case or something that's relevant in that you were maybe able to help someone identify what it was so they could then go through that process and release that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I started going more full tilt into my current practice just as COVID hit, and so I had this one client that I started, one of my earlier clients, and she literally slept 4 hours a night. 4 hours a night. And so when I talked to her about, well, what do you do before you go to bed? She says, oh, well, we watch TV. And I go, well, what are you watching? And she's, oh, the news. I went, oh, why? So, it's just, silly things like that. And then, of course, when she would wake up in the night because she couldn't get back to sleep, I said, well, what do you do then? Oh, I get up and check my phone. I go, oh my gosh, we have so much opportunity to make you feel better.
Absolutely. And let's talk about an intervention there. For example, if somebody's sleeping with their phone, even muted.
Yes.
Folks, I got to tell you something. It's not just the ringer that's triggering you.
The
information comes through here. There's electromagnetic burst that comes out. It's measurable. And even if your phone is on, if it's not on airplane mode, you're getting impacted. if you're within a 3 to 4 foot of that phone.
Yeah.
And maybe that's not impacting you depth right now, but it is based on the allostatic load, that increase. I want to say this because it's like filling up the water, and then it only takes a couple drops to tilt them over or to express disease or to express symptoms. What are some tools that you give once you identify what that is on how to recover from that stress? Either techniques, breathing mechanisms, meditation. What are some prayer? What are some things that you
Well,
work with?
in my community, a strong faith base is incredibly important. So we have I love the opportunity that I have to discuss the importance of prayer and relationship with their creator, and meditating on that, and really for the faith community, that is so transformational, because when you understand who you are as a child of God and meditate upon that and know what the word says about that, it brings such peace. So I have the opportunity with my clientele, because of the focus I have in the ministry, to speak of that. Not everyone has that in their life, but I know that other forms of would be considered meditation have a very similar impact, because it takes the focus out from, well, going beyond just the physiologic thing. I mean, so many interesting physiologic things that happen with meditative practice, but just the mindset that happens, it takes you away from the constant barrage of input, and it clears the mind such that you can then begin to just exist. And just existing rather than responding and reacting is so critical to having a sense of peace within the body. So so prayer, meditation is very important. But then it also comes down to lots of choices. Like, how do you choose to spend your time? Who do you choose? We talk a lot about toxic relationships, and
Sure.
how to manage those, and we talk, some spouses end up having their most heated discussions right before bed. Nix on that. That's something you make an appointment in the morning for. That's not what you do before you go to bed. Choices in what you choose to put into your ears, what you hear, the things that you watch on TV, or even read in a book, listen on a podcast. You know the difference between listening to an inflammatory podcast versus one that is enriching and soothing to the soul, right? So you make those choices.
Which we hope this is. We hope people are feeling tranquility, peace.
Yeah. And of course, I always talk to people about the BEMER as well. And let me just say this, is that no matter what we know about all I can tell you is that it is, this is how I tell people to do this. Is I want you to invite relaxation into your body as you have your BEMER session. Don't block because your autonomic nervous system is very responsive. So if you go in there with the intent of using that 8 minutes to solve a problem, you're not going to feel relaxed. But if you make the choice to say, no, this is my 8 minutes of tranquility, and invite that into your body as the BEMER signal is coursing through your body, it is striking. It is striking the relaxation that you will feel.
So you said invite relaxation is what I heard you say.
Yeah. Yes. Invite it in.
An invitation to invite relaxation is not going out and grabbing it or getting it. And for me, this is the crucial part about rest and relaxation, R&R. It's not about doing something, it's about allowing.
Exactly.
And that takes vulnerability, that takes faith, that takes, this will happen based on what I believe in myself, that has the natural, innate self-regulatory, self-healing mechanisms. I find that to be so profound, this aspect of letting go to recover.
And you have to agree that you want it.
That's exactly. And you deserve it. And you're good.
Exactly.
And you deserve it. Because when we think about it, I mean, people who stay up, there's an old quote from I remember it's a picture of an older gentleman. It's a cartoon. And the question was, how is it that you look so good for your age? And the elderly man said with a twinkle in his eye, those nights when I should have stayed up worrying, I went to bed. And it's true, because let's talk about worry. This idea of worrying about the past, that's called anxiety, just to be clear. Or we're worrying about the future is anxiety. Getting bogged down in the past literally leads from depression a lot of times. But this aspect of being in the now, not pushing, not pulling, but present. And we think about positive thinking, think positive. I'm not even saying that today. I'm actually saying to think neutral.
Yes.
Invitation, be ready for anything you don't know. It could come in, gifts come in so many different forms. And we actually create so much of what's in our environment, whether we're consciously aware of it or not. Why not take the reins back?
And you can train yourself to do that, not just before bed, but as you go through your day, you can learn to go neutral. Oh, it's so great.
I love it.
I love
and
it.
There's tools. There are tools. Like one of the tools that I've used with my patients, for example, I have no financial interest in this company, but it's an incredible tool to use. It's private. No one has to watch you, but you can evaluate yourself through biofeedback mechanism. There's a company called Spire, Spire. And these are devices that are worn on the body, and they measure the rate and rhythm of the breathing, looking at the periodicity, whether you're breathing functionally, and then it will vibrate and geo-track you where you are in these positions when you're not breathing functionally. Because the truth is, the first thing that occurs on a physiological level when stress is about ready to happen is this. A breath in of deep energy, and then the decision is made, do I have to drop or do I have to run?
Right.
This is the fundamentals. And if someone's living on this idea of run, 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 go, go, go all the time, it is unsustainable for the function of the body, mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually.
I agree completely.
Good. One of the ways that I also, rather than pushing the energy and turning the volume up, or what I would say is the intensity up on BEMER, when I'm really trying to tune someone down or help them relax, I usually stick with the lower levels, like level 1, level 2, and mainly with the B body. How about yourself, Dr. Borley?
Well, I have a little program I programmed.
Let's hear about it tonight.
Can I tell you what I did?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's intensity 2, no plus for 20 minutes.
2 for there we go. Perfect.
Is that okay? So,
that's totally fine.
I do it. It's my cat nap.
Yep.
I use it for when I love taking just a little short downtime in the, because I'm older, I can do that. So yeah. So I just put on my little mode, and it's my cat nap mode. And I can absolutely feel, in about 2 to 3 minutes in, I can feel this letdown of the muscle. It's actually a muscle relaxation, I feel.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because the muscles will relax. I mean, think about it. When we're tense, it takes energy to stay, how can I put it, to stay contracted. It takes energy. The default of the body is relaxation. I mean, all the way to death. The muscles don't hold constriction. They
not for everybody though, but some people's default is tension. Yeah. So it's, but that's
a dysfunctional default though. When you really think about it, that's a dysfunctional default, which is, when we look at ATMs, the antecedents, triggers, mediators, these are facilitated by inflammation, by protectiveness, by programming. Ultimately, and I want to get back to this, because ultimately we are programmed, and we allow ourselves to be programmed based on what seem to work for other people that we observe or we are told. And that might not be true. And sometimes we have to deconstruct that information. I'm sure you deal with this all the time with individuals. How do we deconstruct the lies, the myths, the untruths that we once believed who and what we are? That's important. How do you work with
well, that's a very strong, when I have the time, when I take a period of time to talk about mental resiliency with my clients. One of the things that and again, I'm relating it so much to women's journey through life, but I ask them to start being discerning about what's actually true. And I have this little saying, just because you think it doesn't mean it's true. So much of what you think is a lie. And it's a lie that someone told you, or something that you concocted in your brain to make up for something that was a problem, a sorrow, a hurt. And that's not the reality of life. So let's start being rational about it and go, true, not true, true, not true. So yeah, that's how I approach it.
And this is the way we rewire. I mean, it's said that nerves that fire together wire together, and this can be in a positive way or a negative way. I mean, I think about I did all the right things when I was early in clinical practice, and I thought to myself, why aren't these people getting better? They last a while, they walk out of here, they feel great. And I thought to myself, because you can't change anybody when they walk out of your office. They have to do it from within themselves on their own. They have to decide. Right. And so this idea of making a decision to not be stressed, let's talk about addiction for a second, because many people are addicted to the very chemistry of stress.
I know someone, one of my best friends is that way.
I just had a conversation with somebody around, it was about exercise, running. And yeah. I love when people get defensive about their ways that they alleviate stress.
Oh, yes.
And I'm not going to get into the details here, but I'm not against running, but I mean, I used to run a lot, being in the military, training. I think it's good for the cardiovascular system, but ultimately it signals in the body when you're running towards something or away from something that you're in trouble. So that's one reason I don't like heavy running without recovery. Plus, when you're on the BEMER, I want to be sure to tell everyone this. You can really leverage the autonomic tone or the autonomic nervous system when you don't just sit on the BEMER on a reclining chair, but you lay flat.
Oh, yeah.
The act of laying flat to the body changes information to the brain, how you breathe. Do you usually use the BEMER when you're lying down on a treatment table or something like that?
Well, I don't have an office for doing that, but I do recommend that people install it in a place that's very usually their bed is really comfortable to just keep it there under the mattress pad. And it's just more peaceful. I mean, don't you want to be what you're going to do if you put it in your armchair, you're going to click on the news.
That's why I said the sanctuary of sleep.
Yeah.
Honest to God, from my perspective, there should be nothing in that bedroom that could throw. I mean, I'm super sensitive. I go to hotel rooms. I'll bring black electrical tape. I'll be putting stuff on little LEDs. But no kidding. The data's out there. This isn't my opinion or Barbara's opinion. It's our choices. And if we're not discerning what is fulfilling us, i.e., example, what makes us feel alive, light, effervescent, levity versus gravity, heaviness, that already, if you don't know how to discern, how about start there? What feels right in your body?
Very good point. And it's a battle right now for people, Joshua. We know this. It's a battle out there.
Yeah, it is.
The world is tough. Anger is rampant, and external stressors are caving in on people. And we have to be really gentle warriors against this. We have to be gentle with ourselves and make choices that are protective of our bodies and our minds. Yeah. So I really I feel very
protective and supportive for each other. I think coming together, and this is why I love your groups. I mean, you come together in community. There's safety in community, in herds and tribes. I mean, this is why people came together. You don't just, I don't care how cool you are. You're not that good alone. Sorry, no one is.
Exactly.
I'm not talking to you. I'm just speaking to the audience in general. And so to find that community in our environment that's safe allows us to find that safety and find that peacefulness. How's this? Not find it, remember it.
Yes. Exactly. And one of the categories that I'm always checking on, both in the initial intake with a client, but also in, sequential follow-up is really checking on their relationships. It's very critical. People are, everybody's different and they have their different levels of need for closeness and variety, et cetera. But everybody needs people. And we just like you were saying, we have to have the support of other human beings, even going beyond just our marriages. In our kids, we need each other so much. And for those people who find it uncomfortable or out of their boundaries, I talk to them about that because in all likelihood that there's a reason why they have made that choice, and it's out of fear. Something's happened, so let's break that down and let's make some positive steps in the right direction.
Yeah, and these weeds are coming up through these psychosocial stresses that are emerging through a lot of the, how do I say, the hard boundaries that are being put in place over the past couple of years, people aren't doing well with this change. And I mean, we know as we get older, it's very difficult to change. As we're younger, it's easy for neuroplasticity. And so I would just invite everyone to be discerning of yourself and what is stressful to you, but also be supportive. Before you retort, maybe take a breath in and say, hey, I know where you're at there. And that camaraderie, that connection with each other is a fulfillment of interaction.
Yeah.
And that interaction is the fundamental aspect of not carrying a load on your own, but carrying a load amongst many people, which is much easier to do than trying to do everything on your own. Would you agree with that, Barbara?
I would agree. And it just comes to mind. I have a relative who is now just turned 65, and 5 years ago he had a massive stroke, a totally life-altering stroke. And I will tell what they go, oh, well, what caused his stroke? I said, well, he had diabetes and he had hypertension, and he was overweight. But I'll tell you what made it happen is he woke up every day looking for what he could be angry about. And I'm telling you, I am confident that if that had been taken out of the equation, that the rest of it could have been dealt with. But it has profound impacts, and that's a very glaring example. But even thinking about it on a microscopic level, about, well, you don't have to have that negative interaction. You don't have to choose to follow down that pathway that will lead to anger, resentment, et cetera. You don't have to do that. Make some choices to stay away from that. And I use the word toxic relationships because relationships are meant to be nurturing. Yeah. Yeah.
They are. And to identify those things which aren't nurturing to us, and why maybe we accept to be in relationships that we know are not fulfilling.
Exactly.
And it's interesting. We have a mutual colleague, Dr. Mark Hyman. Dr. Hyman did a synthesis on some research some years back, and he put it out there, and it basically comes down to this, and it's not surprising. We as individuals need purpose. We need meaningfulness. And if we're not engaged with that, we're all dying, folks. We're not living if we're not engaged in what's meaningful for us. And so it's interesting. Albert Bosk, he brings quotes up sometimes, the CEO of BEMER, when we're doing that, like meetings and executive meetings and things of that nature. And he said something that was very profound a few weeks ago. And it was this: if you're working or doing things that you don't enjoy, that equals stress.
Oh, yeah. If
you're doing things you love, you're not working. You're doing what you love. And so my father told me this.
That's my story.
Wonderful.
Exactly.
We do what we love, and
I have to tell you. Yeah, I have to tell you, I loved my other career, but it was stress.
Brutal. Yeah.
It was brutal. It was brutal. And I'm just very thankful, very grateful that I managed to not be terribly hurt by that. And, grateful for everything. But this is such a pleasure to be able to follow just a true avocation at this point. Yeah. And I would want that for everybody. I know you feel that way.
Absolutely. We'll have a couple minutes left here, Barbara. Is there anything that you would like the audience to know or to leave today thinking about, whether it be avoiding, reacting versus responding to stress, or maybe some tips, tools? Go ahead.
Well, I think what I'd like to do is just emphasize, we've talked a lot about the psychosocial aspects of stress, but I would like to re-emphasize for people who are dealing with a list of chronic conditions in their life. I want them to understand that from a physiologic standpoint, bioenergetic standpoint, the body senses physical stressors exactly the same way it senses psychosocial, emotional stressors. It all has to do, I know you would say, all to do with energy transfer, all has to do with biochemical reactions. And so thinking about the fact that you have a condition and that it is that condition which you can remediate, you can do something about it, that will take profound stress off of the body, and that in itself will be healing. Getting rid of the disease is healing, but the ability to improve recovery, because that is no longer present, it's an additive thing. So you get a lot more bang for your buck by attacking these issues that can be fixed. And I'm talking about things like hypertension and insulin resistance and obesity, lack of exercise, lack of sleep. All of these things are such major physiologic stressors on the body. Fixing those has profound impact beyond just a better lab value.
Beautifully said. I usually will do a synopsis of calls after, and simply put, you took the words out of my mouth.
Well, okay.
Absolutely wonderful close to this. I want to thank you, Dr. Borland, for being on this call. All you guests, listeners that are currently live and in the future, which is now for you if you're listening or watching this, thank you for being here for Wellness Wednesday. And until next time, my name is Dr. Joshua Burka. Stay out of stress and recover quickly. Go to sleep and invite and allow that to take its place, that place of recovery in your life. Thank you, Dr. Borland.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. It was fun to talk.
All right. Take care now.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.